Stop it! Grandma, help!
Outside the front door, I heard Madison calling for help. I hurriedly turned off the stove and rushed to the front door.
What are you doing there?
It was Sabrina, the daughter-in-law who had abandoned her child 3 years ago, trying to forcefully push Madison into a car by grabbing his arm. Madison bit Sabrina's hand, and while she flinched, he ran to my side.
Madison, why would you do something so awful? I am your mother. What kind of mother are you?
Anger towards Sabrina exploded inside me.
If you were really a mother, you wouldn't leave your child behind. You are not fit to be a mother. And now you show up trying to take my son away. What face are you putting on? You, a stranger, have no right to interfere with our happiness. You're quite presumptuous, aren't you? Then what about Madison's feelings? Have you even thought about the child for a second in these 3 years?
The issue is Madison's will. It's up to Madison whether he wants to continue living with us or choose you. That's for Madison to decide.
Madison, of course, you want to live with me, your mother. Who else bore you with such pain? It's obvious who's in front of you. So, the answer should be clear.
You can be honest with your feelings. You don't have to mind anyone. If it's your decision, I won't say anything anymore. Believing that Madison would choose me, I dared to say such things. Then Madison, pointing at Sabrina, said, "I want to live with Mom." How can this be? I was at a loss for words, never expecting Madison to choose his mother who had abandoned him. My name is Lila, I'm 63. When our eldest son, Morton, got married, my husband and I started living with Morton and his wife. Madison was not Morton's child, but Sabrina's child from a previous marriage, yet we cherished him as our own grandchild. With his charming and affectionate smile, Madison would call us Grandma, Grandpa, and we would smile back, feeling the urge to buy him anything he wanted. Seeing this, Morton would chuckle and advise,
"Don't spoil the child too much just because he's cute."
And we would laugh like children caught in mischief.
Madison is so dear to us, it wouldn't hurt if he was in our eyes.
That was our couple's catchphrase. Then one day, Morton came home downcast, having failed his company's annual health checkup.
"You seem very down. Did the doctor say something?"
I asked, worried about Morton's gloomy demeanor, and he looked up saying, "I need a re-examination. It might be worse than I imagined, but there could be a mistake." Yeah, who can rely on what doctors say? I tried to keep our spirits up, but the re-examination revealed a harsh reality. The family was called to the hospital, and the doctor told us, "It's terminal cancer, stage 4. It took me a moment to comprehend the doctor's words. This man just got married to the woman he loves, about to start a happy life, and this happens. It's absurd." Venting my anger at the doctor wouldn't change the outcome, but I was at a loss for where to direct my feelings, and the doctor silently took it in. "Grandma, don't cry. Dad will be all right." Madison rubbed my back. His brave attitude further stirred my emotions, and I couldn't stop my tears. Ever since Madison came to our home, he had grown quite fond of Morton as a father. Madison, holding back his tears, stayed close to me. When Morton's emergency hospitalization was decided, I went back home to get his clothes and toiletries.
"Wait, where's Sabrina?"
I realized I hadn't seen my daughter-in-law Sabrina anywhere. I searched the house, called her mobile phone several times, but got no response.
Really, where could she be when her husband is in such a condition?
I was frustrated, and Sabrina rarely visited Morton's hospital room thereafter. Morton.
"Dad!"
Morton passed away unexpectedly in less than a month, and both Madison and I cried our hearts out. Perhaps due to his youth, the cancer cells spread quickly. Morton left us for heaven at the young age of 39, leaving his parents behind.
At a time like this, where is Sabrina?
Reynold, next to us breaking down in tears, vented his anger towards Sabrina. Sabrina hadn't shown her face in the hospital room even once during this time. Afterwards, the funeral was hastily arranged, and we were too busy dealing with relatives and condolence visitors to immerse ourselves in grief. Madison, though young, diligently entertained the guests who came. Seeing this, the relatives, with tears in their eyes, murmured,
"How brave he is. Despite being so young, Madison is so admirable."
Hearing this, the sorrow I had been holding back surged forth again. In contrast, as for Sabrina.
At a time like this, what is Sabrina doing?
A while ago, she took a taxi somewhere. A relative who had seen Sabrina reported to us. We were dumbfounded by Sabrina's attitude, hardly befitting a wife. And before the wound of Morton's death could heal, Sabrina left us with nothing but a note saying,
"Thank you for everything. Please take good care of Madison from now on. Mom's not here?"
Madison, waking up to that reality in the morning, couldn't grasp the fact that his mother had abandoned him and started crying.
How could a mother be so terrible?
Reynold, veins throbbing at his temples, yelled loudly. Madison has no blood relation to us. He is Morton's stepchild, son of Sabrina. Now that Morton is gone and Sabrina has left the house, Madison has become a complete stranger to us.
Madison, what shall we do now?
What else can we do?
We'll have to ask relatives to take him in.
Reynold said it in a somewhat cold manner, but upon reflection, that was the realistic choice. However, as far as we knew, the only relative of Sabrina's was her mother, who must be quite old now and living in a retirement home.
It's impossible to ask such a person to take care of a grandchild. That's true.
We were at a loss, racking our brains over what to do. That evening, Madison had not returned from school. Normally, he would have already been home, eating the snacks I prepared. Worried, I called the school, and the teacher told me that Madison had left at his usual time. Even after calling friends and likely guardians. "I don't know," was all the response I got.
"I'm going to look outside."
I dashed out and found a child's shadow swinging on a swing in a park a little away from our home.
"Madison!"
As I rushed towards him, Madison stood up and started running in the opposite direction.
"Wait, Madison! Why are you running away?"
Madison stopped and turned around.
"Grandma and Grandpa are strangers to me, right? So I shouldn't stay in that house anymore." "What silly thing are you saying? Neither Grandpa nor I have ever thought of you as a stranger."
Madison stood frozen, tears streaming down his face.
"Come back. You are an important part of our family." "Is it really okay? Even if I stay in that house?" "If Morton died and then Madison went somewhere too, we would be lonely. Please, will you always stay with us?"
Madison wiped his tears with the back of his hand.
"Okay. I'll live with you, Grandma."
He ran towards me and hugged me tightly. Thus, Madison continued to live with us as before. 3 years have passed, and Madison turned 11.
Today, we played baseball in gym class. Guess what? I hit a home run. Isn't that amazing? That's amazing. Maybe you will be a baseball player in the future?
I don't know about that. I want to do well in my studies too, so being a sports player is probably not for me. Madison tells me everything that happens at school when he comes home. When I bake pancakes and feed them to a hungry Madison.
Grandma's pancakes are the best in the world.
Although he didn't have a mother, Madison was growing up well in a warm and leisurely environment. One day, I received a call from a fellow guardian.
There's a suspicious woman asking around about Madison. A suspicious woman? What kind of woman?
Piecing together the witness information, it seemed that the woman bore a resemblance to Sabrina. Leaving behind a child one has given birth to, no matter the circumstances, is something I cannot comprehend. And now, what face does she have, coming to inquire after all this time? Regardless, we were vigilant every day against the possibility of Sabrina attempting to take Madison back. And then, that day came unexpectedly. As the time approached for Madison to come home, I started baking his favorite pancakes. Soon, the doorbell should ring, and I would hear Madison's voice filled with energy saying,
"I'm home."
With that expectation, I concentrated my ears outside, when suddenly,
"Stop it! Grandma, help!"
I heard Madison's voice calling for help from outside the front door. I hurriedly turned off the stove and rushed to the front door.
"What are you doing there?"
It was Sabrina, trying to forcefully push Madison into a car by grabbing his arm. Madison bit Sabrina's hand, and while she flinched, he ran to my side.
"Madison, why would you do something so awful? I am your mother." "What kind of mother are you?"
Anger towards Sabrina exploded inside me.
"If you were really a mother, you wouldn't leave your child behind. You are not fit to be a mother. And now you show up trying to take my son away. What face are you putting on?" "What face, you ask?" "This face. I am undoubtedly Madison's mother. You, a stranger, have no right to tell me anything."
When I told Madison, "Go inside the house," Sabrina also tried to enter the house.
"Wait a minute. Who said you could come in? Outsiders, please leave. I have no intention of giving him back to a mother like you now. You, a stranger, have no right to interfere with our happiness." "Our happiness? What do you mean by that?" "I have someone I love now. His parents are finally about to accept our marriage. Of course, they have accepted Madison too. This is my chance to be happy." "You're quite presumptuous, aren't you? Then what about Madison's feelings? Have you even thought about him for a second in these 3 years?"
Sabrina, frustrated, scratched her hair violently.
"I've waited 3 years. Just a little more and I'll be happy. You have no blood relation to Madison, you're just a stranger. Why do you have the right to stop our happiness?"
I was caught off guard by Sabrina's statement.
"Wait a minute. You said you've waited 3 years, right now?"
So what?
3 years ago, that's when Morton was still fighting his illness."
Sabrina made a displeased face and said,
"Damn it."
But then she brazenly continued,
"So what? What does that have to do with now?"
"It has everything to do with it.
You were fooling around with another man even while your husband was suffering from illness, hardly ever visiting him. And you dare call yourself Madison's mother? The real bore was him. Getting sick and dying so easily after marrying me. I prefer younger and healthier men."
Forgetting her own infidelity, Sabrina not only disparaged me but also spoke ill of Morton, who had passed away.
Truly appalling. Anyway, I have absolutely no intention of handing Madison over to someone like you."
Then Sabrina let out a loud laugh that echoed throughout the neighborhood.
"Are you sure you can say that? What do you mean?" "You are now separating a child from his biological parent, me. Isn't that a serious crime?" "A crime? Why would I be committing a crime?"
If you have a complaint, why not call the police right now? Who do you think the police will believe?
By the way, my current fiancé, Trace, as well as his parents, always say you are a terrible mother-in-law.
It seems Sabrina is spreading the word that I'm a bad mother-in-law for stubbornly taking Madison away from his biological mother. The moment I learned this fact, a mix of anger and sadness wrestled within me, and I felt an urge to cry. Crying is useless.
Madison is my real child, born of my own flesh. You, a stranger, have no right to interfere from the beginning.
Honestly, I felt an impulse to slap Sabrina right there, but I knew that wouldn't solve anything.
The issue is the child's will. Whether Madison chooses to continue living with us or decides to live with you, his mother, is up to him.
That's true.
Let's do that. Then call Madison, please.
I was confident Madison would choose to stay with us. As always, I would never hand him over to a mother like Sabrina. Madison would never make such a wrong choice. When called, Madison reappeared at the entrance.
Madison,
you heard the conversation, right? What do you think? This is about your life, so you decide. I looked into Madison's eyes.
Madison, of course, you want to live with me, your mother. Who else bore you with such pain? It's obvious who's in front of you. So, the answer should be clear.
You can be honest with your feelings. You don't have to mind anyone. If it's your decision, I won't say anything anymore. I said this, believing Madison would choose me. Then, Madison, pointing at Sabrina, said,
I want to live with Mom.
How can this be? I was speechless, never expecting Madison to choose his mother who had abandoned him.
Just like my son. Rather than living with an unrelated old person, he wants to live with a young and beautiful mom. Really? Is that really okay for you, Madison? Do you seriously want to live with such a mother?
Madison looked at me with a firm gaze.
I've decided for myself. I've chosen to go with Mom.
It felt as though darkness enveloped me. But it's not my place to interfere in the choice Madison himself made. I had to abide by the decision already made. All right. It's Madison's life. Do as you wish. I knelt down and hugged my not blood-related grandson as tightly as I could.
Madison, when did you grow up so much? Even when you go to your new home, make sure to stay healthy. Don't catch a cold.
Then, forcing down my feelings, I'm now a stranger to you. You don't have to remember me. I whispered in Madison's ear with a voice trembling with tears.
I won't forget. I'll never forget, Grandma.
Madison whispered back, audible only to me. Madison silently got into the back seat of the car. Through tear-blurred eyes, I watched Sabrina's car disappear from view. Madison, now far removed from us, seemed to be fighting his own battles, unknown to me. Madison was warmly welcomed into Trace's home.
Madison. Finally, we meet. I've been looking forward to meeting you for a long time.
Sabrina's new fiancé, Trace, 3 years her senior, was a businessman known as a beloved and respected young man. Even when Madison first arrived, Trace made an effort to make him feel at ease in the unfamiliar surroundings by engaging in various conversations. Trace's parents were also looking forward to meeting their new family member, especially his mother, who had risen early to prepare meals. When Madison stepped into the house, a feast laid out on a large platter awaited him on the table, presumably arranged by Sabrina.
Weren't you able to eat good food at their house? Now that you're here, you don't have to worry anymore. You can always eat delicious meals to your heart's content.
Trace said this and winked at Madison. Madison remained silent, not showing a smile.
What's the matter, I wonder? Maybe he's just a bit nervous meeting his new family,
Sabrina said with a forced smile, but Madison glared at her. You don't have to be scared. After all, those people are strangers with no relation to you.
Don't worry. If those people try to take you back, we'll call the police and have them protect you.
Trace and his parents seemed genuinely concerned for Madison.
Madison, why have you been so quiet? Trace is welcoming you. He's going to be your new dad.
Madison continued to glare at Sabrina. Finally, Sabrina, frustrated, snapped.
Enough already. If you have something to say it clearly.
Frustrated, snapped. Then Madison took a deep breath as if waiting for this moment.
I'm grateful to Trace and his family for welcoming me warmly. However, I never want to be involved with you again. What?
Sabrina was stunned, unable to comprehend what Madison had just said, her mouth agape.
Madison, what do you mean by that? Saying you never want to be involved with Mom again?
Trace asked calmly on Sabrina's behalf.
I still consider Grandma and Grandpa my real family. What are you saying? Those people are the bad ones who took you away from me. Don't say such ridiculous things. Madison, you're a kind child, maybe feeling guilty for leaving them. But you don't need to protect those people anymore.
Trace looked at Madison with a shaken gaze. But Madison was resolute.
I'm not being considerate towards Grandma and Grandpa. I just don't want to think of someone who cheated and then suddenly abandoned me as my mother. Wait, Madison. What are you suddenly saying?
Sabrina laughed it off, clearly shaken. Madison continued.
I can't stand it anymore, being abandoned by Mom who now claims to be my mother. I refuse to call such a person Mom for the rest of my life.
Trace's parents, who had been silently listening, looked skeptically at Sabrina.
Madison, is it true that Mom cheated and abandoned you?
Trace's father asked with a stern face, and Madison nodded with conviction.
That's a lie, obviously.
Sabrina hurriedly denied it.
When I was kicked out, this child was only 8 years old. An 8-year-old couldn't possibly understand the real situation. He must have been fed lies.
Saying so, Sabrina broke down crying. Maybe Madison was too young to know the truth. Trace's mother, with tears in her eyes, showed understanding towards Sabrina's argument.
Those people are truly terrible. Brainwashing such an innocent child to their advantage, it's unforgivable.
Trace asserted strongly. Then Madison pulled out a mobile phone from his bag and began to play videos documenting his interactions with us. The video showed us giving Madison presents on his birthday, Madison's joyous reaction. At Madison's sports day, Reynolds, without regard for others' stares, pushed through other parents to cheer. On days off from school, Madison eating the lunch I made happily during fishing trips with Reynolds, filled with countless happy smiles.
How is this brainwashing? This is just a normal relationship between grandparents and their grandchild.
Trace expressed his honest thoughts after watching the video. And at the end of the video, it recorded the scene where Sabrina came to Lila's house to take Madison back.
Stop it! Grandma, help!
Sabrina is seen trying to forcefully take Madison into her car. Then there's a heated argument between me and Sabrina, where in a moment of heightened emotions, Sabrina admits to having neglected her sick husband to have an affair with Trace. Wait a minute. 3 years ago, that's when I met you, Sabrina.
You said you were already on bad terms with your husband and close to a divorce, didn't you?
Trace, noticing the contradiction between what Sabrina had told him and what was now being shown in Madison's mobile phone video, glared at Sabrina. Not just Trace, But his parents also began to harbor doubts about Sabrina's words. Sabrina's face turned pale, and she snatched the mobile phone from Madison's hand.
I'll take care of this.
She ran towards the entrance and smashed it on the ground. The mobile phone made a lifeless sound as it broke easily, and the video stopped.
This must be a trap set up by Lila. She anticipated that someday I would take Madison back, so she prepared these staged videos in advance. That must be it.
It's useless, you know. Madison retorted in a calm tone.
Hey Mom, have you heard of the cloud? Nowadays, even if the mobile phone itself is destroyed, the data recorded on it is saved online.
Looking up at his mother with eyes red from crying.
So, no matter how much you destroy the mobile phone, the data inconvenient for you remains out of your reach.
Not just the video I showed now.
There are plenty of memories with Grandma and Grandpa saved.
Everything you're doing is pointless.
Sabrina. It seems there's no lie in what Madison is saying. We've been deceived by your lies for 3 years.
Trace's father said with furrowed brows.
Don't be fooled. That's all lies. Trace, say something.
Sabrina pleaded for help from her fiancé, but Trace, avoiding her gaze, said, I can't believe you anymore.
I want an explanation that makes sense to both my parents and me.
Sabrina had nothing to say and just knelt on the ground, slumping down.
Well, I had no idea such things were happening behind my back.
I later heard about this unfolding at Trace's house directly from Trace himself. When Trace brought Madison back.
I'm truly sorry for what happened, even though I didn't know.
He apologized deeply. We were surprised and responded.
Please, don't be so formal.
According to Trace, he had been told that the relationship with her husband had already broken down 3 years ago and that divorce was imminent. However, Lila and her husband refused to let go of Madison despite having no blood relation. And Sabrina had been fabricating lies about them, causing Madison daily distress.
We were deceived by Sabrina, thinking you were terrible people.
Then, the moment it was revealed all Sabrina's statements were false, Trace and his parents' sympathy turned into intense disgust.
Sabrina has completely exhausted our patience. The engagement is naturally off.
Trace said firmly and even mentioned seeking compensation for being continuously deceived. Sabrina, exposed for her lies and ejected from Trace's home right before their marriage, came begging to our house.
I'm in a lot of debt. Please help me. We were once family, after all. I was the woman your son loved. You could at least help me a little.
Despite her convenient reasoning, I did not open the door to welcome her. Then, driven by some thought, she repeatedly rammed against the closed door and eventually smashed several potted plants on the ground.
Why can you only think of such foolish actions?
Sabrina was screaming and causing a commotion, but soon, the noise attracted the attention of nearby residents, who seemed to have called the police. The police officers who arrived took Sabrina away. Even as she was being put into the police car, Sabrina was yelling something, but I couldn't hear her. What happened to Sabrina afterwards, we don't know, and now it doesn't matter to us. Since the incident with Sabrina, Trace has visited our house several times to help Madison with his studies.
Madison is really smart, and it's fun to teach him because he learns so quickly.
On his days off, Trace is in the garden playing catch with Madison. If Morton were alive, I'm sure it would have been like this. In my eyes, Trace and Morton's figures overlapped.
Grandma, thank you for everything.
Madison had secretly been saving his allowance and bought carnations and an apron for me on Mother's Day.
That's something you're supposed to give to your mom,
I said bashfully as I received the flowers. For me, Grandma, you're like a mom. Hearing this, Reynold, spurred by a sense of rivalry, said,
Then I'm looking forward to Father's Day.
I'll give you a shoulder massage, Grandpa. I love you because you always take me out to play. Madison, back in our home, has become even more filial to us than before.
I'm going to become a doctor in the future. I'll become a doctor and make sure Grandma and Grandpa live a long life.
With his eyes, clear and devoid of any impurities, sparkling, Madison declared. In married life, it's not just the relationship between the spouses that counts. In fact, relationships with in-laws and siblings-in-law are just as crucial. In my case, I've been troubled by my relationship with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. No matter how unreasonable their demands, I found it hard to push back too hard, knowing they were my husband's family. However, their overconfidence finally led to a deserved reckoning. It was such an unbelievable turn of events that it really drove home the lesson: never be mean to others. My name is Amy. I'm a 29-year-old corporate employee. After graduating from college, I joined a publishing house and have now reached my 7th year. I work with authors and writers, coordinating various articles for magazines. Magazine deadlines can turn the job into a relentless grind, but lately, I've gotten the hang of it, and despite the challenges, find my days quite fulfilling. There were times I regretted joining a publishing house, but those days are gone. I'm committed to thriving in this industry. I've been married to Keith for nearly 3 years now. We met through a friend and quickly clicked over our shared love of tennis. Our relationship blossomed, and 2 years later, we happily tied the knot. We don't have children yet and are enjoying our life as a couple. Our marriage has been harmonious, and we're known in our neighborhood as a loving couple. However, there was one problem in our seemingly blissful married life. It was my relationship with my mother-in-law Rebecca and my sister-in-law Claire. Both lived with my father-in-law Thomas. Claire, who is single, works as a gig worker and spends her weekends at matchmaking events or singles parties. We live in a rental house, so our daily lives don't overlap much, but we still have to visit during long summer vacations or Christmas. Though it's burdensome, I can't avoid it, out of respect for Keith. That's when the harassment from Rebecca and Claire would start.
Hey Amy, long time no see. Haven't you gained some weight? Your skin is a wreck, and your hair's a mess. With your looks, you'll embarrass our Keith. Really, I wonder why Keith married someone as unfashionable as you. We were happy he got married, but it's pointless with someone unattractive like you. I'm too embarrassed to even tell people Amy is part of our family.
The moment I step into their house, they start attacking my appearance. I may not be a beauty queen, but that doesn't mean I don't care about my looks. I manage my diet and exercise regularly, and by all accounts, I'm a healthy weight and size. I avoid foods that are bad for my skin and get my hair treated with hair care items once in a while. Frankly, from my perspective, Rebecca and Claire aren't exactly paragons of beauty themselves. It's baffling how they feel entitled to look down on anyone. Caught off guard, Keith intervenes.
Hey! What nonsense are you two spouting? Amy is my precious wife. Apologize to her, now.
They give a cursory apology, but I can see the mockery in their eyes. They're not the least bit sorry. In fact, anyone truly remorseful wouldn't mock someone's appearance in the first place. Their torment continues, forcing me to help with chores only to criticize my every move.
Amy, you folded the laundry all wrong. Didn't I tell you before? How many times do I have to repeat myself? And the room you cleaned, I found dust in the corners. Go back and clean it again. Really, you never learn. Always getting scolded by Mom for the same things. The ironing you did last time left creases, and I was embarrassed in public. Keith deserves a wife who can at least manage household chores.
They relentlessly throw sarcastic remarks my way. If Keith or Thomas were around, they'd definitely put them in their place. Unfortunately, these two seize the moments they're not around to spew their venom. It is unbearable. I've talked to Keith about it countless times. He'd promptly call his family to confront Rebecca and Claire about their behavior. Though I appreciate it, sadly, it hasn't improved the situation. Desperate, I got Thomas's contact from Keith and decided to confide in him. Thomas listened without interrupting and promised to reprimand them. His words are comforting, but unfortunately nothing has changed. At this point, I've resigned myself to the fact that those two will never change. So next time, my confidant is Henry, a columnist. Henry first submitted his work to our magazine 5 years ago when I had just started managing writers. He's the writer I've worked with the longest. His columns always brim with originality, and I strongly recommended him to my superiors, securing our collaboration. Of course, the relationship between an editor and a writer is fundamentally professional. With most writers, no matter how long we've worked together, we rarely discuss anything beyond work. However, Henry is an exception. During meetings, we often share personal worries. I listen to his romantic troubles, and I vent about Keith. These exchanges are a welcome respite for me. While I've never had romantic feelings for him, our relationship was certainly more than just professional. I place absolute trust in him, and he trusts me as his editor as well. It's because we've built a relationship of mutual trust that we are able to work together and publish great columns in the magazine. Among the many writers I worked with, I regard Henry's talent as unparalleled. I greatly value his ability as a columnist. Naturally, I confide in him about my troubles with my in-laws. Each time I face harassment at my in-laws, I turn to him for counsel. Though he couldn't offer direct solutions or advice, just having someone listen makes me feel significantly lighter. Then one day, I received astonishing news. Claire was getting married. I knew she was actively seeking a partner at matchmaking events and singles parties, but given her personality, I thought marriage would be challenging for her. Yet, Keith told me she was suddenly getting married, leaving me stunned. At the same time, I couldn't help feeling sorry for the man marrying such a disagreeable woman. She must have put on a facade, presenting herself as a good woman in front of him. While I was processing that, Keith added, "This Saturday, there's a family meeting at the hotel in downtown. As her sister-in-law, could you come too, Amy?" Hearing it, I hesitated. Not because I had other plans, my schedule was clear. Considering all that Claire had done, I just couldn't bring myself to go. Sensing my reluctance, he pleaded, "I get how you feel, Amy, but it's a once-in-a-lifetime moment for Claire. I really want to celebrate her wedding. Please, can you help out? I'm begging you." He was about to cry. I was taken aback, but could feel his sincere concern for his sister. I learned that a fair number of relatives from the other side would attend, and my absence would be noticeable. Understanding the adult circumstances, I agreed to attend the family meeting. We decided to let Thomas know I'd be joining. He was thrilled about my participation. If I was going to be there, I decided to make the best of it. I bought a formal dress and resolved to wholeheartedly celebrate Claire's day. 2 days later, I got an unexpected call from Henry. Calls from Henry were rare unless he needed an extension for his column. But that time, it clearly wasn't about work. The deadline for his current column was far off, and it was a topic he was familiar with. Curious, I answered the call hesitantly. To my surprise, Henry sounded cheerful and said, "I have some important news for you today, Amy." Startled, I asked, "What's the important news?" He joyfully announced, "I'm getting married. The date isn't set yet, but I'll let you know. Please come to the wedding." I was almost moved to tears. For 5 years, we had shared the ups and downs of work and personal life. His marriage felt like my own joy. "Finally, you're getting married. Congratulations. I'll definitely be there. I'm curious about your fiancé, but let's talk about it when we meet," I replied, ending the call on a happy note. The back-to-back marriage announcements filled me with joy. With that happiness, I approached the day of Claire's wedding family meeting. Upon arriving at the designated hotel, I saw Rebecca and Claire chatting in the lobby. As I approached to greet them, Rebecca looked at me with disdain and snapped, "Amy, what are you doing here? Outsiders aren't allowed at this venue." Confused, I froze. Claire then added, "Today is an important family meeting for my wedding. Having someone like you here would embarrass me, the bride. And that unfashionable dress is just shameful. Amy, you're just an outsider who married Keith. We'll handle this as a family, So why don't you just stay home and do some housework? At those words, my mind went blank. I had come to the hotel, dressed up and ready to celebrate her, not expecting such treatment. As I stood there undershocked, she took a water bottle from her bag, unscrewed the lid, and swung it at my face. "Just leave as soon as possible," she snapped. With her words, I realized she had splashed cold water all over my face. The makeup I had carefully applied was ruined, but that didn't bother me much. Makeup could be reapplied, but the relationship with her was irreparable. Indeed, I'm not related by blood to Claire. Being called an outsider by her is unavoidable. Nevertheless, to have my goodwill trampled, to be drenched and dismissed, that was beyond decency. I decided such a person wasn't worth any more of my time. Overwhelmed, I left the hotel. Being told to leave by one of the main family members, I felt I had no place there. Exiting the hotel, I darted into a nearby cafe, rushing to the restroom before ordering. I wiped my face with a handkerchief and hastily redid my makeup. Then, settling in the cafe, I ordered my favorite coffee and cake, seeking solace for my troubled heart. I wasn't in any state to head straight home. Before I knew it, 2 hours had passed. Staring at the empty coffee cup and the plate that held the cake, I was still grappling with what had happened. Then unexpectedly, Henry called. Wondering what it could be about, I answered. He sounded anxious.
"Amy, were you by any chance at the hotel in downtown just now?"
Confused about how he knew, I hesitantly confirmed.
"Yes, right, I was there."
There was a pause on the line, both of us lost for words. Finally, he spoke.
"I'm sorry, Amy, but could you come back to that hotel immediately? If you're nearby, it's okay to take a taxi."
Though I was just at a cafe near the hotel and didn't need a taxi, his words hinted at something urgent. Rushing back to the hotel, I found Henry dressed formally waiting for me in the lobby. Led by him, I found myself in the very room where Claire's wedding family meeting was taking place. As we entered, the color drained from Rebecca and Claire's faces, clearly not expecting me to be acquainted with Henry. That's when I grasped the situation. Henry was Claire's fiancé. As I took my seat, Henry stood and addressed the room.
"Thank you all for gathering today. Regrettably, I have to start with unfortunate news. This marriage will be annulled."
The room erupted into chaos, understandably so, given the groom's sudden declaration of annulment. Claire protested.
"What do you mean by annulment? We've been getting along so well."
Henry remained unfazed.
"Until this morning, annulment was the furthest thing from my mind. But then, I saw it, how you treated my valuable business partner, Amy. How you hurled cruel words at her, even dousing her with water from a bottle."
His gaze then shifted to Claire and Rebecca. Following his gaze, I saw them turn deathly pale, clearly not expecting him to have witnessed their actions. Rebecca tried to defend themselves.
"Don't get us wrong, Henry. We were just giving Amy some advice because of her attitude." "Right, Claire?"
Claire chimed in.
"Exactly. Amy is always mean to us. We just wanted her to reflect a little. It's really her fault."
As they frantically spewed lies, trying to justify themselves, Keith stood to rebuke them. But then, a loud bang echoed through the room. Everyone turned to see Henry, his face filled with rage, glaring at Rebecca and Claire.
"Enough. Do you really think such childish lies will hold up? Amy is my lifesaver, having endorsed and supported me as a columnist. I know her character better than anyone. Amy is not someone who indulges in malice or traps others. She's nothing like you despicable people."
As he spoke, the room fell into an eerie silence. Breaking the quiet, his father stood and announced,
"If Henry feels so strongly, it must be for a grave reason. I apologize, but let's consider this marriage annulled."
Prompted by his relatives, one by one, they began to leave the room. Rebecca and Claire got stunned and could only watch them. They surely hadn't anticipated such consequences for their harassment when they first met me in the lobby. Following Henry's relatives, I also stood up to finally head home. Our eyes met briefly as I left, but Henry had spoken all that needed to be said. I had nothing more to add. Later, I learned that both were severely reprimanded by Thomas at home, becoming uncharacteristically subdued. Rebecca was sternly warned by Thomas that any further harassment towards me would lead to divorce. Apparently, the threat of divorce made her comprehend the seriousness of her actions. Moreover, Keith made the tough decision to cut ties with his own sister, Claire. Though she was his beloved sister, he couldn't condone anyone who harassed me, and he made that clear. That might have finally made her realize the gravity of her actions. After that, although I had visited the in-laws' house for various reasons, the situation turned different. I faced no further harassment from the two. That incident must have profoundly affected them, as annulment of a marriage over such matters is exceedingly rare. I do feel a bit sorry for them, but they brought it upon themselves. As for me, I continue to work with Henry. I'm grateful for the chance my role has given me to meet such an outstanding columnist. That case has only deepened my trust in him. Together, we'll keep striving to produce the best possible magazine.
Time to wake up. I'll cool you off. Hannah, my mother-in-law, chortled as she doused me with a bucket full of ice water. Freezing! Has she lost her mind? Pouring cold water on someone who is sick in bed with a high fever? Unforgivable. But in the next moment, my health took a drastic turn, and I was barely conscious when I was rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. As my consciousness faded in the ambulance, I vowed to myself that I would get revenge on that woman. My name is Emily. I'm 30 years old. 3 years ago, I married Raymond, a childhood friend, and we're both the same age. Raymond works for a major company that involves overseas assignments and earns a decent income. I support him as a housewife. 3 years into our marriage, Raymond still invites me out every week saying, "Emily, let's go somewhere on my day off." And we are as close as two people could be, always going on dates. I hope we can keep going out like this even as we grow old. I would get so smitten thinking about our continuous happiness. Raymond was such a kind man, but Hannah, his mother, was the opposite. "How can you not do something as simple as this? You are a disgrace of a wife if you can't even manage the household properly." She would harass me every time we met, no matter what I did. I kept wondering why she was so cruel to me, but there was one incident that seemed to explain it all. It was 3 years ago, during a family meeting. When Hannah said to me, "Don't think I'll go easy on you just because you're Raymond's wife. I'll train you hard." I appreciate it. I'll look forward to your guidance. I had replied eagerly, not realizing just how terrible the harassment would be. I rarely see Hannah, but every time there's a New Year celebration or a family gathering, the thought of meeting her makes me feel gloomy, wondering what she might say to me next. Every time I met Hannah, her harassment had been taking a toll on me mentally. I brought it up with my husband. "Can't you do something about the harassment from Hannah? It's really getting to me." He replied, "Mom used to struggle with housework back in the day, and it seems like she's still not great at it. Apparently, that's why she was bullied by her mother-in-law. The idea that a daughter-in-law should tolerate harassment from the mother-in-law and complaints about housework as a given seems to have stuck with her. I'll call her out on it when I see it. Please forgive her. She's all I have left." My husband was an only child, and his father had passed away 5 years ago, leaving Hannah as the only family he had left. I guess he must have felt sorry for Hannah, being all alone at the in-laws' house since we got married. He would often stop by her place on his way home from work to check up on her. Well, if you say so. I couldn't push for more since Hannah was the only family he had left, and I was content that he would speak to her as he had promised, but the harassment towards me continued. Then, about half a year later, Hannah was scheduled to visit our home. I cleaned frantically all morning and thought everything was ready when I let Hannah in, But she exclaimed before even sitting on the sofa, "Oh, come on, Emily, what is this? It doesn't look like you've cleaned at all." She had started wandering around the living room and spotted some dust in a corner. "I just cleaned there, though." "Are you making excuses now? Look at this dust left here. Do it properly." But as he had promised, my husband stepped in. "Mom, that's enough. Emily has been working hard cleaning since this morning." I was relieved he kept the promise he made before. I'm just stating the facts." Hannah became completely sullen after that. "Come on, Mom, don't be like that." Thanks to my husband intervening whenever Hannah said something to me, I received much less harassment than usual, and by evening Hannah went home. "Thank you for helping me out today." Before going to bed, I thanked my husband, expressing my gratitude. Then another year passed, and one day at dinner, my husband started a serious conversation. "I'm sorry. I have to go on a business trip overseas for about 3 months starting next month. Mom's worried, and I was wondering if she could stay at our place with you just for that time." Honestly, I wasn't sure I could handle spending 3 months with Hannah. But I'm worried. What if she starts saying things to me again? I shared my genuine concerns with my husband. It was hard to believe that Hannah, who was always so spiteful, could stay calm for 3 months. "Please, I'll tell Mom to stop picking on you." After my husband pleaded with me, I reluctantly agreed to live with Hannah in our house for 3 months. A month went by, and the day before my husband was due to leave for his business trip, Hannah arrived at our house. "Emily, I'm looking forward to staying with you starting today." Hannah didn't have her usual snide tone. I guess my husband must have spoken to her quite firmly. Hannah was really well behaved that day, not saying anything to me. The next day, as I was doing housework, Hannah watched me silently but then muttered, "I just can't stand not saying anything about your housework." "What do you mean?" I was confused by her comment, and when I asked her what she meant, the once quiet Hannah changed her demeanor. "The cleaning doesn't seem thorough at all, and the laundry is so wrinkled," she complained again. "Is that so? I thought I was doing my chores properly." I had been on the receiving end of such nagging before, so I responded in kind, which seemed to hit a nerve with Hannah. "What did you say? I've been quiet until now, but I can't take it anymore. I'm going to train you properly in household duties." She burst out in anger. From the next day on, Hannah relentlessly harassed me. Even when I cooked meals, she'd say, "What's with this salty taste? Are you feeding this to my son? Unbelievable." No matter how much I cleaned, "This corner, it's not done at all. And you dare say you've cleaned?" She kept on criticizing everything I did. After a week of this, I sent a text to my husband. "Ever since you left on your trip, the harassment from Hannah has been terrible." I didn't want to worry my husband, who was away on business, but I was at my wit's end, so I sent him that text. "I'm really sorry. I wish I could come back right away, but I can't. I'm always here to listen, whether it's through text or call." "I understand. Sorry to bother you while you're away. Take care." After my husband encouraged me to do so, I decided to start sharing daily updates with him about the troubles caused by Hannah. Those conversations with him became my sole source of comfort. About 2 months into this living arrangement with Hannah, I suddenly fell ill. It must have been the accumulated stress from her constant harassment that finally took its toll on my health. Oh no, I feel dizzy. I found myself struggling from the morning that day, unable to do household chores properly as my legs wobbled beneath me. This fever's through the roof. No wonder I feel so terrible. When I checked my temperature, it was a high fever like I had never experienced before. I figured I needed to rest and reluctantly asked Hannah to take over the chores for the day. I'm not feeling well today. Could you please handle the chores just for today? I asked Hannah, who was lounging in the living room watching TV. Her response came as a shock. What? You expect me to do your chores? A little sickness and you're already shirking your duties. What kind of wife are you when your husband is away? I've got a high fever. I'm too dizzy to do anything properly. I managed to whisper in a feeble voice, feeling like I could collapse at any moment. Then go lie down. Do as you please. She snapped back with a voice filled with anger. Desperate to lie down, I hurried to the bedroom right after hearing her words. I'll take a nap. If I don't feel better, I'll go to the hospital. That was my plan, but I was jolted awake by an intense coldness. It's freezing! In a moment of confusion, I quickly realized it was Hannah's doing. Hey, what are you doing? I demanded angrily, seeing her smug smile. Emily, you said you had a fever, right? Well, how about now? Has your fever gone now? Hannah showed no remorse, provocatively suggesting that her cold treatment was helpful. The thought crossed my mind that she was truly mad to douse someone with a high fever in ice water. If it had been permissible, I would have punched her right then and there, but my deteriorating health didn't allow for such actions. With my consciousness fading and breathing labored, I was at my limit. I'm sorry, please call an ambulance, was all I could muster in a weak voice as I dialed emergency services on my mobile phone. Upon arriving at the hospital, I was quickly seen and diagnosed with a stress-induced gastric ulcer. You were close to needing surgery if this had been caught any later. You do have a high fever, but luckily there is no bleeding, so we'll proceed with medication treatment, I was informed. Relieved that it wasn't more serious, I felt a wave of comfort wash over me. However, you'll need to fast for several days and receive IV therapy, so you'll need to be hospitalized for about a week. Being hospitalized was actually convenient for me. If I went home, Hannah's harassment awaited, and if I fell ill again, who knows what kind of harassment she'd come up with next. Yes, please proceed with the hospital treatment. Going home only means being bullied by Hannah, I said to the doctor. Afterward, I wondered if I said too much, but it seemed I had vented my frustration even to the doctor about Hannah. When I moved to the hospital ward and texted my husband that I'd been admitted, he replied worriedly, "What happened? Are you okay?" I explained the situation. Dousing someone with a fever in ice water? She's out of her mind. I can't deal with her. I texted my husband, who simply responded, "I see, sorry about that." I called Hannah at home to tell her I was hospitalized. "What about the housework during that time?" she yelled, but I ignored her and hung up. I've been patient, but I'm not so kind as to stay silent even when my life's been put at risk. I resolved to get even with Hannah for all the harassment she'd put me through. A week into my hospital stay, my symptoms settled down, and I was finally able to be discharged. Of course, Hannah never came to visit me while I was hospitalized. "I'm home now. Sorry for the inconvenience." It really was an inconvenience. I had to do all the housework because you weren't here. Hannah didn't seem one bit sorry when I returned home and told her, "Well, this situation is partly your fault, isn't it?" I snapped back, frustrated from all the trouble she'd caused me. "What? It's because you can't manage your own health. Are you trying to blame me? Hannah retorted, but I only said yes and retreated to my room. After a while, I returned to the living room, but Hannah was not there. Considering all the complaints she had about my housekeeping, I expected perfection. However, the room was far from it. Wow, what with the wrinkled laundry, and the cleaning's hardly done. The state was worse than when I did the chores. Planning to show her the next time she complained, I took pictures with my phone as evidence. After all she said to me, this is unacceptable. I won't listen to her anymore. Resolved, I began to adopt a defiant attitude towards Hannah from that day on. If she complained about the meals I made, I'd retort, well, you don't have to eat it, you can't stand my cooking anyway. And I would start cleaning away even if she was still eating. If she said the cleaning wasn't done, I'd say, then why don't you do it yourself? It looks clean enough to me. Doing more seems pointless. Who do you think you're talking to? If you are going to keep complaining, why not go back to your own house? I'm only living with you because Raymond asked me to. There were many clashes with Hannah, but as she realized I wouldn't listen, she gradually stopped meddling in my housework. 2 weeks of this life passed, and then my husband returned from a business trip abroad. Seeing him after so long, I naturally smiled. Sorry for making you go through tough times every day, Mom. Upon seeing me, he immediately apologized and called Hannah to the living room. He seemed concerned about the text that Hannah sent on the day I was hospitalized. Told by my husband to join in, it ended up being a discussion between me, my husband, and Hannah. Mom, I've heard a lot from Emily, but is it true that you poured ice water on her when she was down with a high fever? He confronted Hannah, who was seated on the sofa. What are you talking about? Hannah feigned ignorance. And I also heard that you've been bullying Emily almost every day. What about that? Hannah fell silent to my husband's inquiry, offering no answer. Speak up. I can't understand if you stay silent. What on earth have you done to my dear wife? My husband yelled at Hannah with a rage I'd never heard before. I wouldn't do such a thing. I just accidentally spilled some ice water on her while trying to wipe her down. As for the household chores, I was just trying to help Emily get better at them. Hannah stammered out an excuse, clearly in a bind. Just an accident, huh? I was soaked from head to toe. That doesn't just happen by chance, does it? And because of you, I ended up in the hospital, you know. I retorted, after hearing Hannah insist it was an accident, even though she had intentionally doused me with ice water. Plus, being bullied by you every single day made housework take even longer. It was truly stressful. I laid it on thicker, letting them know how the daily harassment had turned chores into a source of stress. It's because I taught you and trained you every day that you got better at household tasks. The moment Hannah said that, I showed my husband and Hannah the photos I had taken of the household chores she had done. Do you still say you were teaching with these? These photos were taken on the day I got back from the hospital. The laundry is all wrinkled, and the floor is so dusty I can't even tell if it was cleaned. An elementary school student could do a better job. I said loudly when showing them the photos, and after that, Hannah had nothing more to say about the household chores. The discussion ended there, and the next day my husband took Hannah back to her home. And so, the life with just Hannah and me came to a close. Since that day, the harassment from Hannah has settled down, and I'm no longer nagged about household chores. But I just couldn't forgive her for throwing ice water on me. 2 months had passed since then, when my husband had to travel again for business. This time it was a domestic trip, not abroad, and it would only last about 2 weeks. 3 days after my husband left for his trip, he called me. "Mom's come down with a high fever and isn't feeling well. Could you check on her for me?" Reluctantly, I went to visit my in-laws' house, thinking this could be my chance to get back at her for the harassment I had endured. "Are you okay, Hannah?" "Why are you here? Just go back, I'm not feeling well." Hannah answered the door, looking quite ill. I wanted to leave to avoid further annoyance, but I stayed out of obligation to my husband's request and entered the house. After showing me in, Hannah immediately retreated to her bedroom, which was cluttered and had hardly any space to step. I was honestly shocked and disillusioned. To be bedridden over something like this is pathetic, I retorted upon seeing her in that state. I had just thrown back at her the very words she had once said to me. "That's right, Hannah, you've got a fever, haven't you? I heard from Raymond. Just keep resting, okay?" It was the exact scenario I had faced before. Now was my chance for retribution. "Hold on, Emily. I can't move. Could you please do some housework for me?" To Hannah's pleading, I responded with a smile. "Why would I? If I do it with my terrible housekeeping skills, you'll just have more trouble when you recover, right? After all that criticism you gave me, I think it's best if you handle it." "Don't say anything. Just help me out. I can't move." Hannah begged me with those words. "If you insist that much, I can't refuse. All right, let's do this. I'll take care of the housework until you're feeling better, but you must promise not to complain." Hannah agreed to my terms, and I began cleaning and doing laundry at my in-laws' house. About an hour in, I heard from Hannah's room, "Emily, I'm sorry to trouble you, but could you bring me some ice water and a towel? I want to cool my head." As requested, I brought a bucket full of ice water and a towel to Hannah's bedroom. "Here you go." After handing over what she had asked for, I left to clean another room. No more than 5 minutes passed when I heard Hannah's cry from the bedroom, "It's so cold!" "What's wrong?" I rushed to the bedroom after hearing a commotion, only to find Hannah soaked to the bone. It seemed she had tried to soak a towel in ice water and, getting off the bed, she tripped over clothes scattered all around the room, overturning the bucket in the process. "Maybe this will help cool your fever down." I couldn't help but smile at the sight of Hannah. After all the complaints about household chores, her own space was a mess. That's why she ended up doused in ice water because of the scattered clothes. "Hannah, you're really something. You complain about others, but can't take care of your own stuff. And now, drenching yourself because of that mess. It's all your own doing, isn't it?" I said to this Hannah as she shivered uncontrollably. "Emily, can you get me a towel and some clothes to change into?" Hannah clearly wasn't in the mood to entertain my comments. I considered leaving her be, just like she did to me, but the thought of possibly having to rush her to the hospital made me relent, so I gave her the towel and clothes as she wished. After she changed and her shivering had eased, I asked with a constant smile, "How does it feel to be drenched in ice water? Do you now understand a bit of what it feels like to have ice water dumped on you when you're sick in bed? That's what you did to me, remember? Next time you pull something on me, I won't be so forgiving, okay?" Later, as I finished up my chores and the day grew dim, Hannah had perked up quite a bit and her fever had significantly subsided. "Well, it looks like you're feeling better, Hannah, and I'm done here, so I'll be heading home." I was ready to leave for my own house, seeing that Hannah's fever had gone down. Wait a minute, wasn't the cleaning a bit sloppy? To my surprise, Hannah broke her promise and started complaining about the housework I did. "What? You're complaining even after making a promise? That's disappointing. But, I did the chores just like you did, and retorted, showing her the photos I had taken as proof of her own sloppy work. Seeing the photo, Hannah was speechless and fell silent. Ah, that reminds me. I heard from Raymond before that you used to be harassed by your husband's mom. Just because you went through that doesn't give you the right to do the same to me. If you really want to harass someone, first get your household skills up to par with mine. And by the way, I'll be sure to report any harassment to Raymond. Right before leaving, I recalled the old story about Hannah that my husband had told me, and I tossed those sarcastic words her way, then left my in-laws' house. I felt great having gotten my revenge on Hannah. I'll never forget the look of frustration on Hannah's face when she couldn't say anything back. On the way home, the memory of her expression made me want to pump my fists in victory. A week went by, and when my husband returned from his business trip, he thanked me for looking after his mom. "Did she say anything?" I asked. "The usual complaints about your sloppy housework," he replied. I had told my husband about the harassment, and right after that, he had contacted Hannah. That's what she had said. Really? She's still saying that? I couldn't believe she hadn't learned her lesson. "Yeah, so I told her off," my husband laughed. "Complaining about others all the time and then blaming Emily because you can't do household chores yourself. If you've got so many complaints, do it all by yourself." We talked more about Hannah and about the revenge I had taken. He was laughing, saying, "After all the bullying you endured, Mom deserved a taste of her own medicine." The next day, Hannah came over, completely subdued, and didn't harass me at all. The day passed peacefully, and when Hannah was leaving, my husband made it clear to her, "Mom, you got what you deserved from Emily, right? If you harass her again, I don't care if you are my mom, I will never forgive you. No matter what happens to you, I won't help you at all." Hannah, who had thought her son was on her side, hung her head and promised, "I understand. I swear I won't do it again," and left. Since then, I've seen Hannah several times, and it seems what my husband said really got through to her. There's been no harassment, and we've been getting along as if nothing ever happened. If Hannah ever harasses me again, I'm ready to give as good as I get.
Before payday as usual, my eldest son, his wife, and their daughter came to visit me at my home. After dinner, they lounged in the living room without helping clean up. As I was about to bring them coffee, I overheard a conversation between my son and his wife through the door.
"Ariel, we should take this house for ourselves. Let's put Mom at some facility."
"We should make her give it to us while she's still alive. We don't want her getting forgetful."
"I'll find a good place for her. Dad apparently left some money, too."
"Great, haha. Mother-in-law's like an ATM, huh? Take out money whenever you want."
"Exactly. It's good to have rich parents."
Hearing their laughter, I felt like collapsing right there. I was crushed by a mix of humiliation and regret. After crying in the kitchen, rage surged within me. I'll never forgive them. I'll make them regret their words and actions. My name is Molly. I'm 82. I lived alone in this house full of memories with my late husband, whom I was arranged to marry. I enjoyed my solitude, attending theater by train or bus, going to department store events. I led my life at my own pace, even skimping on meals or cleaning on my weary days. But then, an issue arose. My estranged eldest son, who had been out of touch since dropping out of high school, started visiting frequently with his wife and daughter. I didn't even know he was married with a child. Yet they just showed up out of the blue saying,
"We've come to show you our grandchild."
"You must be thrilled."
leaving me utterly bewildered. His only goal seemed to be my $7 million inheritance from my father. My father was a company president who owned multiple buildings and apartments in prime locations. After complex legal proceedings, it became mine. That's when my son and his wife started cozying up to me. In retrospect, accepting their first request was probably my mistake. It only escalated from there. Still, it was hard to say no when it was for my granddaughter. They had moved to the same town and were once again at my home during dinner.
Chicken and tomato soup? What a lonely dinner.
My son, who had invited himself over and then complained, helped himself to seconds before broaching a new topic.
Mom, we want Melody to take ballet and piano lessons.
Well, why not? My 6-year-old granddaughter has been skillfully picking out the vegetables from her chicken and tomato soup and arranging them on the table. I'm taken aback. But my eldest son and daughter-in-law are ignoring it. I bite my tongue and go back to my own plate, figuring it's not my place to reprimand her if her parents won't.
It costs around $2,000 a year for the recital costumes and private lessons.
Oh, that's quite a bit. You'll cover it, right, Grandma? Excuse me? My daughter-in-law continues with an air of expectation. We can't afford that. Everyone else's grandparents cover these costs. Okay, fine. I thought, well, if that's all it is, no big deal. But it didn't stop there. Every time a family event came up, they send me a message. Give us $2,000 for a theme park overnight trip, $10,000 for a new car, and $5,000 for our grandchild's graduation trip abroad. Knowing the financial situation of my eldest son's family, I've always been generous with gifts for my grandchild, like for school enrollment and Christmas presents. Yet they still act this way. And yet, this is how they act. Meanwhile, my younger son and his wife, both busy with full-time jobs and living in the neighboring state, only manage to visit around Christmas time. Because my sons have never gotten along, my younger son carefully plans his visits to avoid running into his older brother. When they do come, his wife helps out in the kitchen, and he takes on tasks like caring for the plants in the garden or cleaning out the storage room. They've never asked for money. After my husband passed away, when I was at my lowest, they would come to chat or take me out for afternoon tea at a hotel. They always tried to lift my spirits. Feeling guilty for the apparent favoritism, I once apologized to them. They smiled warmly and reassured me.
We both work part-time and don't have children, so it's no big deal for us.
I'm more than grateful for your hospitality whenever we visit, mother-in-law. Is that so? Thank you. In stark contrast, my eldest son's wife constantly makes demands, as if it's my duty to fulfill them. If I show any hesitation, I immediately get a call from my grandchild. Grandma, please let us make some summer memories. I'm already in middle school. A compact car is too cramped for us. The travel fund and my savings aren't enough. It's hard to say no when pleaded with in such a sweet voice. That's how my eldest wife's son manipulates, making my grandchild call to coax money out of me, time and again. The last straw was the Sweet 16 party that cost $10,000. When I tried to decline due to the exorbitant cost, she exploded over the phone. Don't you care about your only grandchild? You know we don't make much, right? This is a special occasion. Just give us the money without making a fuss. If they're aware that their income is limited, why not take some initiative, like getting regular jobs or even a side gig? They both never quit their jobs. That's why they never get a raise, right? I wanted to say that, but I didn't want to turn it into a mother-in-law versus daughter-in-law showdown, so I just gave them the money. It's not that I mind spending money on my grandchild. It's the entitled attitude from my eldest son and his family that bothers me. Despite constantly asking me for things, my daughter-in-law treats me poorly. As winter was ending, I got a message over the weekend saying, I want to go to Grandma's house. My grandchild mentioned craving shrimp gratin. Tired but determined, I went shopping and made a special meal for the family. They walked in barely saying hello, made themselves at home on the living room couch, and started using their phones or watching TV. Could you bring us some snacks? Sure, I'll bring some cookies. I questioned why the daughter-in-law couldn't make coffee for her own family, but told myself they were guests and prepared the coffee. This has been the pattern since the grandchild was small. They show up right before payday, eat dinner, take a bath, enjoy some beer or juice and snacks, and leave without cleaning up. They don't help with dishes or say thank you. He doesn't even ask. He just takes loads of stuff every time, from daily necessities to groceries. You'd think he could just ask me, but no, he takes things without saying a word. I've just been letting it go, thinking that protesting would be pointless. But having to repurchase everything from groceries to daily necessities is both cumbersome and a real hassle. "Dinner's ready. Would you like to eat in the living room?" I called out, but no one looked up from their phones.
"You're slow. Just bring it already."
Even though I'm inwardly annoyed by my eldest son's domineering attitude, I bring meals for 3 people into the living room. Just as I'm about to head back to the kitchen, my eldest son's wife calls out to me. "Your voice sounds strange, mother-in-law. Do you have a cold?" "Yes, my throat's a bit sore, and I'm feeling sluggish." "Don't get us sick, okay?" my daughter-in-law said, making a face as she started to eat. I was foolish to expect a kind word. And after dinner, they all just sat there, each engrossed in their phones. Not a word of thanks, not a hint of wanting to help clean up. I was surprised at how disappointed I felt. I had still been hoping for something better from my son and his wife. I shuttled between the kitchen and the living room, separated by a sliding door, to put away the dishes for 3 people in the sink. I wash the dishes and make fresh tea for 4. I place my own glass on the dining table and carry the rest to the living room. Just as I'm about to open the sliding door, I hear my eldest son's wife speaking in a displeased tone. "So how much longer is mother-in-law staying in this house?"
"What do you mean?"
"This place has an old house, but the land is huge, and it's in a great location." "I'd love to live here, Mom. Our current apartment is way too small." "Ew, no way I'm living with an old person."
"Look, Ariel, why don't we take the house and put Mom in some facility?"
"That works, but only after we make her gift us the house legally. It'll be a problem if she becomes senile." "That's so mean, Mom." "Well, she might agree if you ask her, Melody. And if she chooses the facility now, she can pick one she likes."
"So I'll go find a good senior living facility for you. Can't miss out on Grandpa's $700 million inheritance."
"Thank you, huh? Having mother-in-law is like having an ATM. Withdraw cash whenever you want, huh?"
"You got it. It's a lifesaver having rich parents."
I felt like collapsing right there as the 3 of them laughed. I wobbled over to the dining table and set down my glass and slumped into a chair. I have to say, I'm pretty spry for 82. My mental age feels like it's in the 50s, and my daily routine involves walking. I shop using public transportation or my bike, and I handle daily chores alone. I was considering making my home more accessible, but who knew my eldest son and his family would plan to take over the house? Soon enough, a sliding door opened, and an angry voice boomed. "Mother-in-law, where's my tea?" "I'm not feeling well. Get it yourself." "Ugh, this is why I can't stand old people. Can't you be hospitable to your guests?" Rolling her eyes and mumbling just loud enough for me to hear, my daughter-in-law left with my son and granddaughter, leaving the living room a mess. Alone again. I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. I always feel worn out after they visit, but this time was especially draining. Tears flooded my eyes as I remembered their heartless words and actions. How could they think that way? Where did I go wrong raising my eldest son? My chest ached with shame and regret. After shedding some tears, a wave of anger surged within me. I clenched my fists. I won't let them get away with this. They'll regret their actions. Just you wait. A month later, a memorial service was held at the church, marking 10 years since my husband passed away. Afterwards, as relatives dispersed in the parking lot, I told my eldest son and second son and their wives, "I'm remodeling the house." My daughter-in-law then piped up, "Remodeling at your age?" Yes, I want my son to inherit this home filled with memories of his father. I need to start the gifting process. Really? Now? Standing next to her beaming parents, my granddaughter chimes in with a cozy smile. Grandma, we are thinking about moving into a single-family home soon. Our apartment feels cramped with 3 of us. Even though she's already 20, she still uses a sugary tone when she's asking for something from me. Is that so? My eldest son and his wife exchange glances, nodding as if they'd just confirmed something. By the way, mother-in-law, how's your health? You're bedridden with a cold, right? Thankful for my daughter-in-law's concern, I managed to smile. I'm better now, thank you. My recovery was slower than I'd like. Oh, no, you keep us updated. You want pity because you're living alone at your age, right? The expression on my younger son's face changes as his older brother's wife smirks and lets her words fly.
Excuse me, sister-in-law?
Ignoring her brother-in-law's attempt to stop her, she hops into the car, rolls down the passenger side window, and shouts with a laugh. Grandma's our piggy bank. From now on, just contact us for major life events, okay? And let us know once you've sorted out the living trust. Standing beside my shocked younger son and his wife, I give in and respond, all right, understood. Afterwards, while calming down my angered younger son and his wife, they drove me home. For a while, I didn't hear from my older son's family. I began renovating my house as declared and proceeded with various preparations. Then I invited my younger son and his wife over to talk. And surprisingly, my older son's family showed up uninvited.
Sorry, Mom. I casually mentioned to my brother that you had finished the home renovations, and they insisted on coming.
I shrugged my shoulders at my apologetic younger son. It's fine. Let's also talk about the living trust while we're at it. My older son's family, particularly his wife, were inexplicably in high spirits. You have to let us know right away, mother-in-law. It's our house after all. She forcefully pats my back and shoves past me to take a look around. They surveyed the newly styled kitchen and dining area and looked delighted at the spacious living room. The wife gestured and complimented. The other room still looks outdated, but this living room is amazing, mother-in-law. You actually have good taste. This Nordic interior suits us, right, Melody? Yeah, let's replace this old sofa with a branded one and some houseplants. Oh, my room's upstairs, right? As my granddaughter started to head upstairs, I stopped her. Melody, it's rude to wander around someone else's house. You're an adult. You should know that. Taken aback by my uncharacteristically stern tone, she turns and freezes. My older son's wife immediately snaps. What's the big deal, mother-in-law? This will be our house soon. Who said I was giving this house to you?
What? But Mom.
Their faces crumpled in confusion. This house will go to my younger son and his wife. Upon hearing this, the younger couple who were sitting on the sofa looked visibly stunned. After a pause, my older son and his family close in to protest. What? That's absurd.
The eldest son should get the parents' inheritance.
The law divides inheritance equally among siblings. Remember, I also received half of your father's inheritance, and you both shared the other half.
Do we? We've long spent it, so I don't remember.
Exactly. That's why I'm giving all the land that I inherited from your father to your younger brother. In that moment, the eldest son's wife showed a devilish expression. You're giving him all the $700 million worth of assets? That's insane.
It's only right that the eldest son should inherit everything.
No, it should be split equally among the siblings, I said coldly, cutting off the eldest couple's rant. Do you really think you get anything after constantly disregarding me? You both are audacious. The couple stood there, mouths agape, pale as ghosts. Clearly they thought they'd get it all. As for the younger son and his wife, their eyes were wide in surprise.
Mom, are you sure it's all right for me to inherit everything, including the house and the land?
Yes, Mom-in-law. It's kind of overwhelming, honestly. The younger son's wife finally chimed in. Living in an apartment as we do, a house with a garden, feels like a dream. Is it okay if we move in?
I mean, we're glad to help around the house, but won't it disrupt your peace?
Don't worry, I'll be in an assisted living facility. Molly and others seem to have researched it, but I can find my own place, no worries. I took the opportunity to throw a barb at the meddlesome eldest couple. By the way, the renovation reflects your sister-in-law Tamika's taste, which luckily aligns with mine. Wow, it really is a comfortable space. You're giving it to us? I smiled warmly at my younger son and daughter-in-law, who were marveling at the interior. Some of the older rooms, like his study, are still there. Is that all right?
Absolutely, Mom. It's great that places we played in as kids are still here.
We'll take good care of the sofa. It's a vintage piece you bought when you were newlyweds. The warm smiles on their faces warmed my heart, too. This house is filled with memories from our early marriage. I'd be happy if you cherish it. I'll leave the land management to Jesse and Tamika as well. But right next to us, the eldest son's wife screamed, "Ah! You've got to be kidding! I won't stand for this!" She glared at us, me, my younger son, and his wife. "How could you possibly decide to give it all to them and not us? You dangled the idea of a living will, so I thought we'd inherit a lot." She began to yap like an unruly puppy. "We even showed you our grandkids' faces from time to time, including a welfare check on you. What a waste of time and gas." The audacity of my eldest son's wife's gesture made even someone as patient as me lose my temper. I slapped her hand away, and she blinked in surprise, staring at me. "Nobody asked you to come, so mind your own business." I stared her down, raising my voice. "You show up before payday and make me cook dinner. You don't lift a finger, don't say thank you, and you even sneak out a ton of my groceries and household supplies. The nerve of you!" My younger son and his wife looked at the eldest son's couple incredulous. "You were planning to ship me off to a facility after remodeling the house, weren't you? You've been siphoning money from me for years, using the grandkids as an excuse. Have some shame." She was probably shocked because it was the first time she'd seen me raise my voice. Everyone in the room held their breath, all eyes on me. Even I have the right to choose who gets my assets. There's no way I'm leaving anything to my irresponsible eldest son and his wife. Then my daughter-in-law lifted her head. Her expression had shifted from defiant to desperate. "But we're in trouble. We maxed out our credit cards relying on that $7 million in the living trust from you."
"And I bought a new car. What are we going to do?"
"If you were relying on your parents' money, that's your own fault." "So you want us to go bankrupt?" She clawed at her hair and started to yell hysterically. "You're Hollis's mom, right? We're family. We're in trouble, so you should give us money. Fulfill your duty as an ATM." "Mom, just stop it." While my grandchild stepped in between my eldest son's wife and me, I quickly pulled out my phone and got to work. I sent an image to a group chat that included the 5 of us who were present. As everyone's phones buzzed in unison, everyone but me checked their screens and simultaneously exclaimed,
"What? Ariel?"
"What? Why did this get sent to me? Is this for real?"
"Oh my God."
It's no wonder they were shocked. The video showed my daughter-in-law acting in an unthinkable manner. I played the video on my phone for everyone to see. "Starting next month, I'll be the store manager, so let's let loose a little." There she was, my eldest son's wife, gleefully standing at the cash register of my own workplace in her uniform. She chugged down a can of beer in one go. Then she began greedily devouring the snacks, sandwiches, and deli items laid out on the counter. "It's fine. I'll pay for it. It's just $25. With a smile, she blurted something into her mobile phone, and the video came to an end. Faced with cold stares from the family, my eldest son's wife offered an awkward excuse, forcing a smile. "It's okay. I was really hungry, and I paid for it."
"You're kidding, right? Eating and drinking is prohibited in the store, especially during work hours."
My son was not amused. "It's okay. I only sent it to my partner." "But what if he leaks it online?" I shook my head in disbelief. I felt sorry for my son and granddaughter, who were searching the internet with solemn faces. "Don't worry. The original video has already been deleted."
"Really? How do you know?"
"A friend of Ariel's, who's also a friend of mine, showed it to me. Remember the barbecue we had when Melody was little?" "Oh, yeah." "I showed the video to the store manager when I visited. He deleted it right in front of me, saying it was a lesson for Ariel.
And then?
I'm sure you can guess what happened next.
Can you believe this old hag?
The oldest son's wife lunged at me in fury, only to be quickly pulled away by the second son, smoothing out the wrinkles on my collar. I spoke to her with icy detachment. You're almost 60, aren't you? Can't you tell right from wrong? You don't even think about how you're affecting the family. I'm truly disappointed.
But what are we going to do now? I was supposed to get a pay raise and bonuses as a manager. And we'd be able to buy all the designer stuff we wanted. You've ruined everything.
She cried and muttered, to which I replied, Why not take your complaints to the manager and apologize, though I doubt you'll be forgiven.
Darn you, you'll regret this.
Fuming, she left the house in a huff. The remaining eldest son clung to me, his face pale, his eyes filled with tears.
What should I do? We won't be able to pay our condo rent anymore. Mom, I apologize for the awful things I've said. Please help me out.
I have no money to give you. This conversation is over. Go home.
Dad, let's give it up.
Though his daughter tried to pull him away, he remained as rooted to the floor as if he had grown roots. This time, he turned to his younger brother, desperation in his voice.
Hey, Jesse, even if it's just 1/3, could you share some of Grandpa's land with me? No way. You ignored Mom, and now you dare ask?
Shaking off his brother's grip, the eldest son collapsed onto the floor, his voice weak.
This is bad. I'm heading for bankruptcy.
Come on, Dad. Let's go home. Stop making a scene.
Prompted by his daughter, my eldest son left with his shoulders slumped. In that moment, she seemed to have aged significantly. Though my eldest son's wife eventually apologized, it was too late. The opportunity for her to become the store manager was rescinded, and she was forced to resign immediately. According to my eldest son, she had been racking up debt, buying designer clothes and bags on credit cards. To pay off her debts, she not only worked daytime shifts but also took on extra work at night, essentially working around the clock. My eldest son, who had taken out a car loan, assuming he would receive financial help from me, sadly had to sell the car. Even then, they couldn't catch up on repaying her debts and eventually couldn't afford their apartment rent, moving to a rundown apartment instead. My granddaughter, who was the only one leading a decent life, working in retail, ended up having a big fight with her parents over taking on their debts and moved to a different apartment. She had once ridiculed me along with her parents, but she had lost all patience with her mother's excessive shopping and her disturbing workplace behavior. She even blocked calls from both parents when her father, my eldest son, started asking her for money. My eldest son admitted that he has no idea where she is or what she's doing now. There's tension between the couple, and although divorce has been discussed, they've opted for an in-house separation due to the cost of living apart in their cramped apartment. It's a pitiful situation, and it filled me with sympathy. Having transferred my house to my younger son and his wife and completed the gifting process for the land inherited from my father, I moved into an independent living facility for seniors that I had previously applied to. Here, I'm living a relaxed life, growing flowers and watching movies on my computer. I sometimes go shopping with friends I've made here, or have coffee and chats with my younger son and his wife who come to visit. I blocked contact with my eldest son and his wife after their messages begging for money became overwhelming. Now I have no more worries about being exploited as their unpaid housekeeper, or them siphoning off my money. I plan to spend the rest of my life peacefully, watching over my kind-hearted younger son and his wife.
I'm Isabella, a 35-year-old office worker. I'm married to Lucas, who's 5 years younger than me, and we live in a small apartment. Lucas has a sister, Abigail, who's 4 years younger than him. She's already married and has moved out of her in-laws' home. We don't see her or my mother-in-law often, just during summer vacations and Christmas. It's an hour's drive to my in-laws' place, but my father-in-law seems lonely. so he's been visiting us quite frequently lately. Isabella, what on earth are you doing? Open the door within 10 seconds when I ring the doorbell. You're so inconsiderate. My mother-in-law complains if I don't open the door immediately after she rings the doorbell. I'm sorry, mother-in-law. I was in the bathroom and couldn't come right away. My apologies. I don't need excuses. When I arrive, you better come out as quickly as possible. What are you standing there for? Where's my coffee? Honestly, what kind of upbringing did you have? You have no manners. She visits unannounced and expects to be treated like royalty when she's here. To be honest, I find it hard to deal with my mother-in-law. I initially thought I should be polite because she's the woman who gave birth to my husband, but I never expected her to be so rude and self-centered. I head to the kitchen, letting out a small sigh so mother-in-law can't hear. Meanwhile, she's lounging on the sofa, watching TV. Here you go, coffee and some snacks. What is this? You knew I was coming and you didn't get any fancy snacks. Bring out some delicious pastries. I didn't know what to serve since she came unexpectedly, so I offered her a $3 donut from the shelf. But she wanted something more expensive and told me to go buy it right away. Next time, if you could let me know in advance, I'll prepare some pastries for you. Actually, I've been feeling unwell since this morning and was lying on the sofa. I've always been prone to catching colds during seasonal changes. Today is a weekday, but I took the day off for some errands. I never expected mother-in-law to show up today. When I asked why she came today, she said she saw my car and decided to visit. I told her I'd appreciate a heads up, but she said, "Why should I tell you my plans? This is my son's home, so I can come anytime I want. No need to inform you. But if you don't let me know, I can't prepare your favorite snacks. Plus, I have plans this afternoon and will be stepping out, so I can only accommodate you until then." I looked at mother-in-law with a troubled expression and she clearly looked displeased. What? You want me to leave even though I came all the way here? You have no sense of hospitality, do you? No, that's not it. But I took the day off for a reason and have plans. I can only accommodate you until noon today. Please come again when Lucas is around. While snacking, mother-in-law kept talking about how a daughter-in-law should behave. She probably thinks she's doing this for my benefit. But all I wanted was for her to leave the room as soon as possible. Eventually, as I started getting ready to go out, mother-in-law seemed to give up. Next time, make sure you have at least 3 of my favorite snacks ready, she grumbled as she left. I forgot to remind her to check with me before coming over, so I sent her a WhatsApp message. She never read it. When I told my husband about all this, he said, "That sounds tough, but maybe my mom is just lonely. Could you keep her company when you have time?" I thought, if that's the case, she could at least consider my schedule. Dealing with mother-in-law who always acts on her own terms is becoming increasingly exhausting. We're both busy with work. If you're so concerned, why don't you spend time with your own mother? I told him. He replied, "Isn't that something you should handle, Isabella? Women get along better, and it would make my mom happy. Please do it." And quickly headed for the bath. Clearly, my husband finds it bothersome to deal with mother-in-law too. He'd rather pass that responsibility on to me. I get it. No one wants to be bossed around by mother-in-law after a long day. But I feel the same way, and it's even more stressful because she's not my biological parent. I wish my husband would help out, but that seems unlikely given his current attitude. A few days later, I got home early from work and was preparing dinner when the doorbell rang. Mother-in-law? What's this? The place is a mess. You're in charge of the house, so keep it tidy. Mother-in-law, didn't we just talk about this? Please check with me before coming over. It's really inconvenient when you show up unannounced. I used to be gentle about it, but that only encouraged her to take advantage. So I've started to be more direct about things I don't like. By the way, you did prepare the snacks I asked for, right? I specifically told you last time. Hurry up and bring them out. I came today looking forward to it. She sat on the sofa expecting me to bring the snacks. But of course, I didn't have time to prepare anything. I'm sorry. I don't know you were coming, so I didn't prepare any snacks. When I told her I didn't have the snacks, she was visibly annoyed. What do you mean you didn't prepare them? I told you last time. You're such a failure as a wife. I can't believe Lucas fell for someone like you. I would never let someone like you marry into the family. You're so inconsiderate. I was really irritated by her words and almost retorted. But I held back, knowing it would only make things worse. Ignoring mother-in-law, I continued preparing dinner. What's with the way you're cutting these vegetables? Why can't you cut them nicely? Now she was criticizing the way I was cooking. This is the correct way to cut them. Weren't you aware? What? There's no need to cut them like that. What are you planning to make for dinner? Don't feed my son anything weird. As I was cutting the ingredients, mother-in-law was scrutinizing my every move. It was incredibly uncomfortable, and her constant complaints made everything take longer and made me more frustrated. By the way, what are you here for? It's almost dinner time. I was hoping she wasn't planning to stay, but it turned out she was. Oh, it's fine. This is my son's house, isn't it? So it's practically my house too. I can come whenever I want. Besides, I'm curious about what you usually cook, so I'll taste it before I go. She plans to eat the food I've prepared, even though I didn't invite her. Actually, you don't have to do that. Today I'm making fried chicken, which my husband loves. It might be a bit heavy for you. Today I'm planning to make tomato soup and my husband's favorite fried chicken. I remember her saying she avoids fried foods because of her age. Upon hearing fried chicken, she frowned for a moment. I thought she might leave, but she said, I can't leave without tasting your cooking. Prepare something light to cleanse the palate. She's determined to eat my cooking, whether it's convenient for me or not. So reluctantly, I prepared dinner for her as well. Just as the fried chicken was ready, my husband came home. Mom, what are you doing here? I didn't know you were coming. Clearly, he was surprised to find her at home. It's fine. I was curious about how you're living. I'll have dinner here too. If Isabella is okay with it, then I guess it's fine. But didn't you come unannounced last time? Did you call ahead today? Why should I have to call? This is your house, so it's practically my house too. I don't need to call. She won't even listen to her own son. I sighed where they couldn't hear me. Mom, that's not how it works. Just because it's my house doesn't mean you can show up unannounced. Always call Isabella first to check if it's okay. My husband took my side, but that seemed to upset her. They argued the whole time I was preparing dinner. She even accused me of turning her son against her. Finally, dinner was ready, and we all sat down to eat. My husband was delighted with the fried chicken, but mother-in-law was not. "What is this? The fried chicken is too big and greasy. I can't eat this. You shouldn't be feeding my son such unhealthy food. I regret letting him marry you." She complained about every dish I had prepared. "What are you talking about? Isabella worked hard to make this. You're the one who insisted on joining us for dinner. If you're not happy, you can leave." My husband stood up for me. And suddenly, mother-in-law started crying. "How could you speak to me like that? You used to be so kind. It must be Isabella's fault. She's changed you." She blamed me for her son not taking her side and stormed out, leaving her dinner unfinished. "I'm sorry, Isabella. I never thought my mom could be so selfish." My husband apologized on behalf of his mother, clearly not expecting her to act the way she did. After that incident, mother-in-law stopped contacting us and making surprise visits. We thought she was too embarrassed to show up after being scolded by her son. I might have been a bit harsh, but honestly, her unannounced visits were inconvenient. I've been particularly busy with work recently, as it's the busy season. Even though I come home exhausted, it's mentally tough to have mother-in-law attack me in this state and throw me around selfishly. When mother-in-law stopped coming, life got easier. I was more productive at work and at home. I hoped things would stay peaceful, but little did I know, mother-in-law was plotting something terrible. It all started with a phone call. Not long after my husband got home, mother-in-law called. She invited us to a barbecue at her house during the upcoming holiday weekend. "Abigail will be there too. Why don't you both come?" We were surprised that mother-in-law, who had been so inconsiderate before, was now asking about our availability. My husband and I exchanged glances. "Sure, we're free that day. Thanks for calling to invite us." My husband ended the call, and we both thought that maybe his stern words had finally gotten through to her. After all, I thought that instead of storing up my dissatisfaction, I should tell the person I don't like it. A few days later, we went to mother-in-law's for the first time in a while. When we arrived, my sister-in-law and her husband were already there, setting up for the barbecue. We get along well, so I was happy to see her. She's pregnant, so I helped her with her preparations. Mother-in-law was completely different from before. She didn't give me a hard time at all. In fact, she even apologized for her previous behavior. "I'm sorry for being so inconsiderate before. Next time, let's plan ahead." When I said that, my mother-in-law looked very happy. The barbecue was fun, and we all enjoyed some light conversation. Since we were staying overnight, I even had a few drinks. But this was just the calm before the storm. The real nightmare began later, around 2 a.m. I woke up thirsty and went to the kitchen for some water. There, I found mother-in-law rummaging around. "This will be the end of that daughter-in-law." I couldn't hear her clearly, but she left the kitchen soon after, so I thought she was just thirsty like me. However, I would find out the next day that this was not the case. The next day, mother-in-law started cooking something in the kitchen. "What are you making?" My special shrimp po' boy. I prepared it secretly last night. My husband said her shrimp po' boy was delicious, so I was excited to try it. I remembered what happened the night before and was glad I hadn't interrupted her. Mother-in-law asked me to make clam chowder, so I started cooking. If he had kept it a secret, he shouldn't have called out at that time. My mother-in-law asked me to make clam chowder instead since she fried food. So I decided to make clam chowder. When my husband and others smelled the food, they came into the kitchen.
Ah, Mom's shrimp po' boy. It's been a while.
Everyone was looking forward to it. As I was about to serve the food, Mother-in-law said, "I'll take care of that. You go sit down." I noticed something black on my shrimp po' boy. Just as I was about to eat it, my phone rang. It was a call from a junior colleague at work.
Eat your food, Isabella. It won't taste good if it gets cold.
But father-in-law isn't here yet.
He'll be here soon. Just eat.
I was about to eat when my phone kept ringing. Something might have happened, so I excused myself to take the call. I heard mother-in-law make a tsk sound as I left. My father-in-law took my seat as he returned from the bathroom.
Ah, Mom's shrimp po' boy. Looks delicious.
Father-in-law sat down in the empty seat and reached for my shrimp po' boy.
That's Isabella's.
Mother-in-law tried to stop him, but no one else intervened because I hadn't touched it yet.
It's fine, she hasn't touched it yet.
My husband encouraged father-in-law to go ahead and eat.
Bon appetit. Don't eat it!
It was too late. Father-in-law had already taken a big bite.
What is this?
Father-in-law suddenly started making a fuss after eating the shrimp po' boy. Everyone stopped eating and looked at him. I returned from my phone call to find father-in-law covered in red hives, struggling to breathe.
I told you not to eat it. That was Isabella's shrimp po' boy.
Confused, we called an ambulance and rushed father-in-law to the hospital. It turned out he had an allergic reaction, but timely treatment saved his life. According to my husband, father-in-law had no food allergies, only to cats and dogs. I'm also allergic to cats. Even a slight touch can give me hives. But there were no cats at mother-in-law's house. The doctor asked us what could have caused the allergic reaction. I noticed mother-in-law looking awkward and uneasy.
What's wrong, Mom? You look pale. Do you know something about Dad's condition?
Well... Mother-in-law had been acting strange. Then I remembered her saying,
That was Isabella's shrimp po' boy.
What did you mean by that? You know something, don't you? Cornered, mother-in-law finally confessed.
I put cat hair in Isabella's shrimp po' boy. You said you were allergic to cats, right? I wanted to get back at you for last time, but I didn't think it would turn out like this.
She admitted to mixing cat hair into my shrimp po' boy. I remember seeing something black in it, but thought it was shrimp whiskers. If I had eaten it, I might have ended up like father-in-law. The thought sent shivers down my spine. However, what mother-in-law did is completely unforgivable. If you make a wrong move...
What were you thinking?
My husband confronted mother-in-law.
She never respects me. She only serves cheap snacks and doesn't listen to me.
I was dumbfounded. The reason I couldn't prepare better snacks was that mother-in-law always showed up unannounced. If you had told us you were coming, I would have prepared your favorite snacks and listened to you, I said. Mother-in-law's selfishness had put father-in-law in the hospital, and I felt helpless. It's not Isabella's fault. It's yours, Mom. Mother-in-law lost her temper. I'm the mother-in-law. She should be prepared for my visits. She never treats me well, so I thought I'd teach her a lesson by putting cat hair in her food. Mother-in-law showed no signs of remorse. That's it. I can't forgive you for trying to harm someone I care about. We're cutting ties with you, my husband declared. Me too. I can't deal with you anymore, especially with a baby on the way. How does it feel to be disowned by your own children? If it were me, I don't think I could ever recover. Mother-in-law, who was always high on pride, insisted she did nothing wrong, even when criticized by her husband and sister-in-law. So, we got permission from the doctor and went to visit father-in-law in his hospital room. When father-in-law heard what had happened, he apologized to me on mother-in-law's behalf. Right after he was discharged, he served mother-in-law with divorce papers. Why should I get divorced? All I did was play a little prank on my daughter-in-law. I absolutely won't agree to a divorce. Mother-in-law, who never thought she'd be divorced, was outraged. In the end, the situation escalated to involve other family members. Mother-in-law was humiliated and forced to sign the divorce papers in front of everyone. We moved to a secure apartment far from our parents' home to ensure mother-in-law couldn't visit. The moving costs were a burden, but it was worth it to be free from the stress of mother-in-law's visits. Thanks to that, I became pregnant and safely entered the stable period. We found out we were having a boy and spent happy times picking out baby items and thinking of names. That's when it happened. Mother-in-law, somehow finding out about my pregnancy, suddenly showed up in front of my workplace. I was shocked to see her as I was leaving work. I finally found you! She closed the distance between us with incredible speed. It's all your fault. If you hadn't left your seat that day, I wouldn't be divorced now. Take care of me. She appeared out of nowhere, demanding I take care of her. Apparently, mother-in-law was not only shunned by father-in-law's relatives, but also her own, and she was struggling financially. I have nothing to do with your problems. Why should I take care of you? I spoke my mind, as she is now a stranger to me. But mother-in-law grabbed me and started yelling right in front of my workplace. Stop it! I'm pregnant! I don't care! I'm struggling here! Security and colleagues tried to restrain her, but she was uncontrollable. I was worried about my unborn child when I heard sirens in the distance. Someone had called the police for me. In fact, the person who made the report also thought I was being attacked by a suspicious person and called the police. Mother-in-law was taken away by arriving officers. I told my husband about the incident when I got home. I can't believe she'd do something like that. I'm just glad you're okay, Isabella. I felt a bit sorry for mother-in-law, being referred to as that person by her own son. It's true that the mother-in-law is at fault, but as a mother myself, I feel a little sorry for her child who calls her that person instead of calling her mom. Mother-in-law ended up spending a few days in jail to reflect on her actions. But even after her release, she was still struggling financially. She called all her relatives for financial help, but no one was willing. We also received a call, but there was no way we'd help her after what she had done. But mother-in-law didn't give up. She kept asking, "When will they come to get me?" But her children never came. Mother-in-law finally realized she was abandoned and spent her days crying in regret. On the other hand, I safely gave birth to a baby boy. Giving birth for the first time was difficult, but I was really happy that the baby was born healthy. A month after my discharge, my sister-in-law and father-in-law visited us with gifts. My father-in-law and I have a lot of issues with my mother-in-law, but we still have an agreement to meet regularly. Father-in-law is now living in a small apartment near us and works as a tennis coach. He was actually a strong tennis player in high school. I have always been an active person, and I often spend my days off doing physical activities such as running and swimming, and enjoys buying toys and clothes for his grandson. Despite all the drama with mother-in-law, we're happy now. Our son is growing well, and we're looking forward to raising him together.
I'm Emily. Jake, 2 years older than me, is a science guy. He's living his childhood dream of a research job and seems fulfilled even though he's busy all day. Our son Mike is 3 years old. Just like Jake, he loves observing and experimenting. Right now, he's obsessed with the goldfish he caught at the fall festival. Our daughter Sarah is 1 year old. She loves to eat, and her chubby white cheeks are just adorable. She's the comfort and joy of our household. Overall, life is pretty good for our ordinary family, except for one thing. "Emily, what's for dinner tonight?" "Mother-in-law." Just as I was trying to calm down my crying daughter and finish up dinner, the doorbell rang. Without any hesitation, my mother-in-law walks into our home as she often does. It might not be the same day every week, but she shows up around this time frequently enough that Mike hardly even looks away from the TV. "My goodness, fried food again? That's not good, so oily. You need to take better care of Jake's stomach when he comes home tired from work. It's not good for the grandkids either." "But Mike really likes it." "Well, that's because you only feed him junk. Look, I've made a creamy vegetable stew and minestrone for you. It's important for the kids to get used to Western food from an early age." My mother-in-law starts setting the table with the large containers of creamy stew and minestrone she brought. It's a lot, enough to last for at least 3 days, and I feel a little down just looking at the stew, which is mostly just carrots and cabbage. "Come on, stop daydreaming. I'll take the food you made home with me, so go ahead and pack it up. It's not tasty, but we can't waste food." This is routine. Last time she visited unexpectedly, she replaced my clam chowder with her own fried chicken. Holding the still warm container, she left without even looking at her grandchildren. Once the front door closed, my son turned to me softly. "Grandma took my fried chicken again." My heart aches seeing my son's sad face. "Don't worry, there's a little bit of meat left. Just wait a moment." Yay! As I heat up the oil again, I feel relieved seeing my son's joyful reaction to my words. However, my inner dissatisfaction remains. My mother-in-law has been overly intrusive since my marriage, but it's gotten worse over the last year. Every week, she shows up unannounced during dinner prep time. Initially, she would just criticize my cooking and parenting, then leave her cream stew on the counter. But for the past 6 months, she's started taking my food home with her, effectively ruining our meal. I can't imagine my mother-in-law, who lives alone since my father-in-law passed away, eating all 3 servings. She's probably throwing it away. As I prepare baby food and distract the kids, I manage to cook. It's tough, but seeing my family's happy faces keeps me going. Yet, my fried chicken, braised pork, mapo tofu, and hamburgers, all of it gets taken away. I grew up in a family that ran a restaurant, and my dad taught me how to cook. So I'm confident in my culinary skills. And yes, I think my food tastes better than mother-in-law's overly sweet cream stew. It irks me to have my skills negated by her. But with Mike in the picture, I've been struggling to stand up to my mother-in-law, his grandma. More cream stew? Jake, who comes home after the kids have gone to sleep, makes a face when he sees dinner. Since only Mike's share of fried chicken was left, I served Jake a large platter of the cream stew. What can I do? It's what mother-in-law brings over. If you don't like it, you tell her. Yeah, I guess. Jake pokes at the stew, as non-committal as ever. She shows up without considering Sarah's nap time and even takes away Mike's favorite foods right in front of him. Well, she's lonely since Dad died. That was 2 years ago. How much longer do I have to put up with this? Yeah, I guess. Ugh. Jake is usually reliable, but he avoids confrontation when mother-in-law is involved. Another pointless conversation goes by, and I let out a deep sigh. The only silver lining is that she hasn't suggested moving in. One day, tired of the same old routine, mother-in-law says something different when she drops by during dinner as usual. Emily, this Christmas everyone's gathering at our place. What? After your father passed away last year, we couldn't really do anything, right? We've been relying on relatives from Dad's side since the funeral, so I'm inviting them to our home as a way of saying thank you. Sounds exhausting. Responding with a lack of enthusiasm to my mother-in-law's arrogant tone, I wonder how she plans to host people suddenly when we've always gathered at her brother-in-law's or her own childhood home for Christmas and family reunions. She frowns at me, looking like she's dealing with someone of lesser intelligence. You're not just a bystander here, you'll be helping too. What? Come over on the 24th and help clean up. Stunned by the audacious decision, I try to quickly object. But Sarah is so young. Just use a baby carrier or something. That's how women used to do it back in the day. Maybe, but you're also in charge of the full-course Christmas meal. Don't you dare repackage store-bought food or cook anything that tastes bad. I don't want to be embarrassed. What? You can't be serious. I'm thinking of inviting your dad's relatives on one day and my sister's family and our daughter on another. It'll be a busy holiday. Although she's complaining, I can sense a happy aura coming from her. Hold on, the one who's going to be busy is me, not you. As the daughter-in-law of this family's eldest son, do your duty properly, okay? Having had her say, my satisfied mother-in-law leaves the meatloaf and heads out, leaving me stunned and my surprised son behind. She doesn't forget to pack the shrimp gratin that just needs to be baked, though. That night, when I tell Jake about it, he's as bewildered as I am. What? She's planning a party from Christmas, even inviting Dad's side of the family when he's not here? Yes, that's the plan. Well, maybe Mom's lonely. I finally lose my temper at Jake's predictable response. Think about what it's like for me, always being pushed around. Seeing Jake's face turn to an unmistakable uh-oh, he goes silent. But even he realizes that this time it's too much and lets out a resigned sigh. All right, I'll handle the cleaning and entertaining the relatives. Really? I'm glad to hear Jake's proposal. It gives me some direction. But can you still cook the full-course Christmas meal? Just for this year. Let's keep Mom's reputation intact. Plus, everyone in the family loves your cooking. As he pleads, Jake is staring at the meatloaf mother-in-law left for us. I mean, it's hard to say no after making a concession. Fine, just for this year. Thanks. Man, I can't wait for Emily's Christmas feast. Geez, you're in high spirits, aren't you? Being praised isn't so bad, and I don't mind cooking for people. So I brace myself that it's just for this time and agree to prepare a full-course Christmas meal. When I tell my mother-in-law that Jake will stay over to help with cleaning, she makes a displeased face and says, "How could you let the man of the house do such things?" But she seemed reasonably satisfied seeing Jake bustle around at his parents' home for my sake. And then comes Christmas lunchtime. "Emily, is the corn soup ready?" "I'm preparing the croutons now." I scurry around the kitchen, getting the carpaccio and corn soup ready. "You're so inefficient. I'll bring the food myself." "I'm sorry. If you're going to complain, try preparing a meal for 20 people. It's really, truly exhausting." Finally, the serving is done, and I sit down at the party. Jake seems to have put our daughter down for a nap in another room. Preparing a full-course Christmas meal for 20 people was hard, but it feels good to see everyone enjoying my cooking. However, that good feeling lasts only a moment. "This quiche looks so beautiful. It's like something you'd buy." Thank you?" "Geez, you're good at flattery." "This carrot slaw is perfectly balanced with the vinegar. The orange scent really freshens up your mouth." "That's because Christmas meals tend to be rich, so I made it a bit more acidic." Something's off. Every time someone tries to compliment my Christmas cooking, mother-in-law interrupts. Something is not right. And the source of this awkwardness is revealed by Sophia, father-in-law's sister. "Emily's mother-in-law is such a great cook, isn't she?" "Excuse me?" Confused, I let out a dumbfounded sound. Unperturbed, Chatterbox Sophia continues her story. "Did Olivia make this entire Christmas feast? That's amazing!" "Huh?" "I haven't cooked a full-course Christmas meal in ages. I was going to leave it to my daughter-in-law, but she's absolutely terrible in the kitchen, and she never comes by, even when I offer to teach her." "What?" The mother-in-law talks about struggles she never even faced as if they're a given, leaving me puzzled. "Oh, Emily, you should really take after Olivia while she's still well. Jake might miss the taste of home sometimes. You know, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach." Daniel, a relative hanging around Sophia, laughs. It feels like he's mocking me. "You know, Olivia, that pork belly stew you made last time was delicious. It's amazing you can cook both Western and Japanese dishes." "It's not that big of a deal, but I'm glad you enjoyed it." The mother-in-law smiles and feigns humility, but that pork belly stew was clearly my creation. As I stand there astonished, she mouths, "Go along with it." Apparently, she's been claiming all my dishes, including the Christmas feast, as her own and sharing them with the family. And now she wants me to be complicit in her lie? No way. Especially after she's been criticizing my cooking all this time. Though I want to speak out, I'm overwhelmed by the crowd and find myself speechless. My savior turns out to be my son. "Mom, this omelet is really tasty. It looks different than usual, but your omelets are always good." My young son's high-pitched voice echoes through the room, and the noisy adults fall silent. "Oh, Mike, this is actually a quiche your grandmother made." Sophia tries to cover for my son, probably out of kindness. But my son responds, astonished. "Huh? But it's tasty." "What?" "It's tasty, so it's got to be Mom's omelet. Grandma's omelet is super sweet and gritty. It doesn't taste good." My son passionately insists, gesticulating wildly, leaving the adults exchanging puzzled glances. Of course, the mother-in-law panics. "Emily, don't teach the child to lie." "Excuse me? Who's the one lying here?" "Mom, am I a liar?" Mike looks up at me, his face full of insecurity. That's when I felt my blood boil. I was foolish. I don't care what people think of my mother-in-law or Jake. I've put up with her because she's Jake's mom and Mike's grandmother. But a grandmother who turns her grandson into a liar just to save face is nothing but evil. If she's going to make my child a liar, I'll become a demon if I have to. I took a deep breath and straightened my back. Mike is not a liar. The one lying here is you, Grandma. Huh? She must have never expected me to stand up to her. My mother-in-law looked shocked. I stood up and pointed at the table dramatically. I made this entire Christmas feast, including the corn soup. Everything from start to finish. What? Naturally, the room erupted. My flustered mother-in-law began to panic and yell. Wait, Emily. You've been lying this whole time. Have you lost your mind? I'm not lying. Sophia, you said you got the pork belly stew from Grandma, right? Sophia, now pulled into this, looked up at me, surprised. Yes, it was delicious. I made that too. Huh? You're terrible. Stealing credit for Jake's mom's cooking and trying to set her up. You're the worst daughter-in-law. Then can you tell me the recipe for the pork belly stew, mother-in-law? What? Can you? Well... She hesitated. Then, as if struck by inspiration, she shouted, It's a secret! It's a secret family recipe, so I can't tell you in public. You don't have to give details or measurements, just the basics. Even the relatives who were disgusted by our petty fight started to see who was in the right. Emily, that's enough. My husband Jake had apparently finished putting our daughter to sleep. He had silently appeared near the door and restrained me with a stern voice and face. My mother-in-law clung to Jake as if he was her ally, looking like a tragic heroine. Jake, what's up with your daughter-in-law? She's calling me a liar. That's awful. Mom, you're the awful one here. What? Mother-in-law's mouth drops open. This entire Christmas feast, Emily made it all day while taking care of the kids. Trying to take credit for it is pretty low. Jake! Sophia, the only thing Mom made is that massive bowl of creamy stew over there. Have you tried it? Huh? Yeah. Sophia, once again caught in the middle, looks at the pointed out creamy stew, visibly shaken. Is she recalling how incredibly sweet that stew was? Yeah, it was insanely sweet, wasn't it? Mom thinks if it's sweet, it's tasty. She's always been so cautious about salt and oil, but uses sugar with no limits. So all her dishes taste like a block of sugar. Is that so? The pork belly stew was probably made by my daughter-in-law, too. If you got any other dishes from Mom recently, they were likely made by Emily. Really? Even that meatloaf? That was me. And the mapo tofu and shrimp gratin? That was me. Everyone in the family is disillusioned with mother-in-law because of her own son's revelation. Isn't that right, Mom? Mother-in-law, exposed for all her lies, is panicking. Seems like she's given up on lying and is now trying to appeal to Jake's emotions. Why are you siding with your daughter-in-law? I'm your mom. I didn't want to have to say this either, Mom. I thought you were just lonely because Dad isn't here, so I've been having Emily put up with you. But this isn't anything but harassment towards her. There's no reason to protect you anymore. Don't see Emily or the kids ever again. Jake, who firmly dismisses his begging mother, starts to clean up the Christmas feast. Then he apologizes to the relatives. I'm sorry for the disturbance this Christmas. Emily, Mike, let's go. Jake! As Jake takes Mike's hand and stands up, Mike glances at mother-in-law. Grandma, where's your I'm sorry? Huh? When you lie, you say I'm sorry. Then you get forgiven, right? Isn't that right, Mom? I get it. You have to be forgiving when it comes to raising kids. But a simple sorry isn't going to cut it. Luckily, I didn't have to worry for even a second. Mother-in-law clenched her lips so tightly they looked like they'd bleed, clearly having no intention of apologizing. Seeing her, Jake sighed as if he'd had enough. Grandma can't even say I'm sorry, and she's supposed to be an adult. How sad. Let's go home and have Mom's delicious Christmas feast. Okay. Oh. We left behind a growling mother-in-law and confused relatives, carrying our sleeping daughter and the Christmas feast as we left Mike's house. We went straight to my parents' place and served the Christmas feast. Everyone was delighted and ate with joy. This is what I had been striving for, so my heart was full. Jake, of course, apologized profusely and promised never to let us meet mother-in-law again. Apparently, the atmosphere at Mike's house remained awkward. His relatives dispersed, leaving only a soulless mother-in-law and some bland food. The next day, mother-in-law's sister and her husband, as well as Jake's sister, visited as promised. Seeing the bland food, they chuckled and said, "Figures." Apparently, mother-in-law's lack of cooking skills was a well-known fact among her relatives. "So you brag about hosting a Christmas feast?" I wondered what magic trick you'd pull. Probably just jealous of Emily, who's good at cooking and praised by Jake and Mike. "Sorry for the inconvenience," they said. After hearing the details from Jake, my sister-in-law thanked me for my efforts. Sophia also called to apologize. "I'm sorry for jumping to conclusions." It turns out Sophia also enjoys cooking, and we bonded over a recipe for braised pork belly. The misunderstanding with Jake was cleared up, and I found new friends who share my cooking hobby. I felt refreshed, enjoying a carefree Christmas. Of course, mother-in-law wasn't going to back down that easily, but I'm well prepared. As I'm making cornbread, my phone rings. It's mother-in-law. "Excuse me, where are you? It's dinner time. Do your duty as a wife." "Are you making the same mistake and coming over again?" She's furious on the other end of the line. "How dare you? I came here because you didn't apologize. Come home and clear the misunderstanding with our relatives. Then I'll forgive you for embarrassing me." "No thanks." "What? You'll be the one left out by the family." "That won't be a problem." "What?" To begin with, the one who put on airs and got shunned by the relatives was mother-in-law. I've even made plans to cook with Sophia next time. "What?" Mother-in-law probably never imagined that I'd become close to father-in-law's side of the family. In other words, I'm well aware that mother-in-law has distanced herself from father-in-law's relatives. So, what now? Still got any moves left? I add another blow to the stunned mother-in-law. Also, I'm not returning to that house. What? Yes, the kids and I have been staying at my parents' house since Christmas. We're planning to find a new place to live now that the holidays are over. Initially, living near Mike's family was mother-in-law's strong insistence, but Jake's workplace is actually closer to my parents' house. Didn't Jake tell you to stay away from daughter-in-law? But since mother-in-law can't listen better than a child, we've decided to physically distance ourselves. Right now, Jake is the only one living there, and he'll leave once he's ready. What? Where are you? Who knows? You think you can get away with not cherishing Jake's mom? Yes, because Jake and sister-in-law have forgiven me, it's okay. Well, wait, what? Thank you for everything so far, mother-in-law. I'm so happy I'll never have to see you again. Goodbye. Wait a minute! With a bit of a laugh, I hang up on mother-in-law, who's screaming like a villain in a superhero show. Then I block her number to make sure I never have to hear her voice again. 2 years later. Mom, what's for dinner today? Hamburgers. Yay! I love Mom's burgers the most in the world. Sarah loves them too. Sarah loves them too. Dad loves them the most in the universe. Oh, Dad, that's not fair. My family happily waits for my cooking in the living room, playing around, as I fry the burgers in the kitchen. My heart warms up again today, watching them eagerly await my cooking, smiles on their faces.